Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be covering the single most important factor when you're setting up your base to optimize its firepower, its ammo use, its overall efficiency. This video will help push your base to a whole other level using some very calculated management of your turret. So we're going to walk through some of the best ways to actually configure your turret and the different turrets on your base. This will be very potent for you early game, mid game, late game. If you haven't configured your turrets, it's about time to look at this. Spend a bit of time in careful consideration because this can really stretch your potency of your base. So we're going to get into it. First, I'm going to give you some really good examples. So for instance, we have here a line of the 30mm twin barrel turret. Now, if we unclick, see how all of these are firing at a target that would only take one bullet to kill, I mean. So here we are wasting multiple hundreds of rounds over a course of a game, if not thousands, where it would only take one shot, but we're overkilling it, attributing to a huge waste. And this the same thing happens to multiple towers. And even though we're in an infinity mode, this is going to be by far the most potent during your tour extraction, because conserving ammo and setting your towers up at the beginning can have a huge positive side effect on how much you can loot and push through having a very minimal base. So we're going to go through some examples of how we can look at setting it up differently, provide the absolute best case scenario. Now, some of this will take time depending on how many towers and where you're up to, but it's a good habit to start this early on. Before we do that, we're just going to highlight again what's happening here. So all these towers are just configured. If we open them up, double click on them, we see here, they're all just set to the max range. Now, it's very common practice just to have towers at different ranges, but we can make this so much more efficient by just doing a few extra steps. Same will happen with the CWIS here. If one of these multiple CWIS locks onto targets that would easily just take one or two shots, we're wasting a lot of ammo. So let's go see how we resolve this to get a much better efficiency in this particular example. So what we're going to do is we're going to edit our base, and we're going to go through a few different examples, but in order to configure all the different turrets, we need to switch to the adjust mode to really save a lot of ammo over the course of your extraction day. Is we would actually go through and change each individual turret max range. And we need to keep in mind, from my understanding in this, is 100 equals 1 centimeter in the game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but say if this max range said just 100, that would equal to say 1 centimeter in the game. So 10,000, that would be 100 meters. So that gives you an idea how the range works in terms of its units and coverage. So the way I do it is I keep the turrets on the outside having the max range and then slowly decrease the range as I go into the middle. Reason being is that the turrets on the corner have much more visibility and potential use. Therefore, it makes a bit more sense to have them maxed out on range because they can hit the most targets. But what I would do is I would suggest we would go in and adjust this one, and we would just try to do it by 100. So what I would try to do is I would try decrease this just by 100 or possibly 200. It doesn't have to be exact. Let's just say 9,700. That's all right. So the next one, we would go and adjust that. I put that on say 9,300. Same again, we'll decrease this one, put this on 9,000, decrease this, and would so on and so forth. So I'll just go ahead and decrease these tower ranges. I'll start on this side again and do the same. But really what you would want to do is just select these two by holding shift and then adjust the range that way, starting with actually these two. So that would be the quicker way to do it. But since I didn't do it that way, I'm just going to go and do it individually, and it's just going to be a rough. It doesn't have to be exact. The main thing is that it's not all going to be firing at the exact same time. Offsetting the different ranges is going to be a highly effective way to increase how your overall base performs, and I'll show you how much of an impact this has just when you're starting out, as I've just started a new game. So we've adjusted the ranges. We may need to tune this a bit better, and then we would go ahead and pretty much do the same with all these towers. Is we would just offset all the ranges, having some max, and then everything in between, give or take between anywhere from 1,000 to 8,000. Doesn't matter if they get a bit closer to the base, that's fine. The aim is just not to waste the ammo. So we'll just test this front line because I have to go and reconfigure my whole base at some point, so I'll be implementing that. But I just wanted to show you in a clear example, so we'll jump in. I might put a side-by-side shot just so we can compare. But let's just skip and watch the enemies come at the towers. Now the towers, this front line here, do have a different configuration. Now we may get attacked on the other flanks, but here we go. We should be able to get a good indication. So see, all of those got killed at once because the turrets are a different range. It may need to be adjusted a little bit more because we can still see there's a few firing at the same time. So we probably need to do it by maybe between this distance, about 20 centimeters on the screen or whatever. We need to set the ranges a bit more drastically to be a bit different, just to ensure that we're actually getting the best out of this scenario. So they're reloading. So we got one getting taken out. So at least it's doing a little better in terms of all of them not firing at the single target just because it gets in range. But if we just skip forward, it is a much better use of the ammo already. We can take this way further by really changing up all these different range adjustments to really maximize this. So you can see how potent this could be just by doing a simple change of adjusting all the ranges individually on all your different towers. Now, this is particularly potent for your early to mid game when you are using your twin barrels, your sea whizzes, a ton. And this is a great thing to do on your sea whizzes. Sea whizzes? The sea wizards. But the aim here would be just to try get one firing at a target at a time. So if we click on the guy on the corner, and this is again why I would set him to the furthest range, because he can attack not 360, but nearly a 180 degrees, if not much more, giving him the furthest reach possible. But one thing we can do here is we can watch the targeting of the individual scorpions. Now, the important thing to understand about these red lines is that this indicates what the turrets are currently tracking. So it doesn't mean that they're all going to fire at this target at the same time, but they're tracking this target. So you'll notice that the turrets will pretty much always track in nearly all situations the closest target. So that's why you'll have all these turrets targeting one thing at a time always, or at least in nearly most cases. However, since we've set the ranges to offset between all the different towers, even though it's being tracked, only certain towers are going to fire at that target as it gets within range. To keep that in mind. So I will try to put like a side to by side just so we can sort of see the difference of the turrets with their different range settings. So only killing all of them there, using a lot less ammo versus where we had all of them set to the same and they were targeting the same individual target. And we have a lot more room to play with adjustments, and I would actually go through and adjust these quite a lot to really make sure it's just like one firing at a time, keeping in mind that this is mainly for your woodland snow areas, just to really maximize your early to mid game. So what we'll do now is we're going to jump into a game where I'm in the woodlands with a very basic base, just to show some of the differences there. Okie dokie. So here is the base. We're going to go into edit. It is a very, very simple base. This is just throwing things together, but we can already make things so much more efficient. What we need to realize is that your machine gun fires a lot faster, does a lot less damage than the single barrel 30 mil. So the first thing we would be adjusting is clicking on all the MGs, and we would get them to focus on the small enemies. We would actually unclick the medium unit. The large unit, they won't really target because it's out of range. We would click OK, and then for your 30 mil, you'd actually adjust these, get them to not target the small units and get them to only target the large unit. And what we'll do is we'll adjust all these different smaller towers, just changing some of the different ranges, some drastically, some not. Now for your 30 mil, you would probably don't want to lower them any further than 5,000 for most of them, just because you're dealing with the medium and large enemies that have a bit of range themselves. So you may need to keep a bit of a closer eye on that, and depending on how you're adjusting. But again, we want to offset these turrets, different ranges, to increase their efficiency. Okay, so we've gone through and adjusted most of these. So what we'll do is we're going to do a run where we have them adjusted, and then another run where we don't, put them side by side and just compare how they perform and how long the base lasts. We're not going to do anything other than just sit there, just so we can compare the two. Actually, the best way to kind of show this is if we go into the infinite mode and just go into dire situation, and we'll try this out and see which base lasts the longest. The one that has the range adjusted or the one that doesn't. And we did lose a lot of our towers. Yeah, here we are in. Now, one thing is, oh wow, the performance is so nice when you're on a smaller base. Thing is, we do have tanks in this, and since we have these not setting to target small units, we are probably going to need to set all of them, all the 30 mils, pretty much to their max range. Otherwise, we will get nuked by the tanks because they have a pretty long range. These guys can only hit up to here, so we don't really have much room to play with. But we should notice a big difference just even having the machine guns at a different range. So we'll see how this test goes. So this is the base with the machine guns having a different range spread, whereas the 30 mils don't, just because we are versing a lot of tanks and we have no other turrets that can target them. So in this instance, we really do want to target them as quick as possible so they don't damage the base. So we'll go skip. We'll get straight into it and we'll see how long this base will last. So what we're going to do to save a bunch of time, we're just going to look at these two bases side by side. We've sped up the footage as well, just so we don't get too time consuming, because just a quick illustration to show the difference between how you set up your towers and your configuration in your base will really make a big difference. So on the left, we have the configured base. So that's the one with the towers have been purposely and individually configured. So the range is different on the MGs only, whereas the 30mm Stinger cannon is also configured but to max range, only targeting the medium to large unit. And then on the right hand side we have the non-configured base, so everything is just set to max range. So you have your 30mm, your MGs all targeting at their maximum distance, and we're going to see which one is going to be able to perform the best between these two setups. And we can already see that the right side, the non-configured side, has already gone through a ton of ammo and is getting nuked by the moment because it has only one 30mm left of actual ammo. All the other 30mm have been used up. So this is just a really good example to highlight what a difference it can make and how far this can really push your base in your early game and your mid game. It is absolutely imperative. And one of the best strategies you can do is to offset your different towers. And we can see down the bottom that they're both on wave 3. But looking at the non-configured base, you can tell it's going down, it's going to get destroyed. Whereas the base on the left is only just starting to get bombarded. And it's going to pretty much be able to last till round 4 or wave 4. Whereas the non-configured base is going to die prematurely because its weapons have all just been wasting all the ammo in the world, and a really clear, good example of why you need to configure your towers. So I just wanted to do that demonstration, and it clearly does define and show the example. So if you implement some of these changes to your base, if you haven't already, I guarantee you will notice a very good difference in your early game, particularly. And then it also carries on to your mid game. So just to clarify, the difference is a non-configured base only made it up to the basically very early on in the 3rd wave or 3.5 waves, whereas the configured base survived all the way to pretty much the last 3/4 of wave 4. So quite a big difference, something that's quite quantifiable and noticeable. Got something out of this. We're going to go through another video on this subject soon, but we're going to break down the more advanced turret systems and configurations. Hope you got something out of this. If you did, consider liking and subscribing. Cheers.